Tonight on Joynews Prime, National Democratic Congress nominate outgoing MP for Nadoli Kalio and second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbing, as Speaker of the 8th Parliament. A day after the New Patriotic Party also put forward its nominee for Speaker. The party is insisting it has the majority of MPs in the 8th Parliament. We'll be getting the details shortly. President Akufo-Addo delivers the last State of the Nation address for his first term, insisting he won resoundingly the December 7 election, which gave him a second term.
I am thankful to the Ghanaian people and to the Almighty that I have been given a clear mandate to govern the country for 4 more years.
The minorities are unhappy the president failed to mention the deaths that occurred during the election.
He even failed to mention the persons who died.
I thought that he missed the opportunity to acknowledge the loss of life during this election. I mean, this is something that has never happened. I mean, I can't remember the last election that we had people losing their lives in these numbers.
Energy Minister Peter Amewu gets the green light from the Supreme Court to take his seat in Parliament as MP for Hohoi. In Business Trade Ministry confers on the Ghana Revenue Authority, competent authority for trading under the Continental Free Trade Agreement. We'll bring you details in the next 30 minutes. My name is Judicial, and Joynews Prime is coming to you live from our Fanofa studios at Kokumlimli here in Accra on your digital terrestrial TV, because we're free to air, and also on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. This is the home of independent, fearless, credible and impactful journalism. Stay tuned in. Now, in some news coming through in the last 1 hour, the opposition NDC has put forward MP for Nadoli Kalio, Alban Bagbing, as its nominee for Speaker of the 8th Parliament, setting up a face-off with the NPP, which has also put out its nomination for the role. The NDC's nomination comes despite threats by the governing NPP that the NDC could lose the second Deputy Speaker slot if it went ahead to file a nominee for the Speaker position. My colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson has been monitoring a meeting by the Functional Executive Committee of the party, which ended a while ago, and he joins us via Zoom. Now, Parker, so what is this news coming through that Alban Bagbing has been nominated by the NDC as Speaker? Apparently, he wasn't the only nomination they've put forward. They've named other leadership positions.
That's correct, Israel. And, you know, since morning, it's been rumored that Alban Bagbing was going to be, the NDC was going to select Alban Bagbing as the nominee for the Speaker position going forward into the 8th Parliament. Now, just about an hour ago, the party held a functional executive committee to approve the nomination of Alban Bagbing. So they have instructed their members in Parliament to submit the name of Mr. Alban Bagbing, the outgoing member of Parliament for Nadoli Kalio. And this is coming on the back of some threats issued by the NPP that if indeed the NDC goes ahead to file Speaker nominee, what is going to happen is that they risk losing the second Deputy Speaker position. Well, the party called the bluff of the NPP. They say that the NPP does not or would not control the 8th Parliament absolutely, just as they've done in the 7th Parliament. They occupy 137 seats equally, and so they have every right to file a nominee for the Speaker position. And interestingly, Israel, the party also instructed their members in the House to refer themselves as the majority side of a Parliament going into the next Parliament or the 8th Parliament. And we don't know how it's going to pan out, but that's been the instruction from the party to the NDC side in the House. Again, the party says that they're going to maintain the current leadership of the House. That is from the NDC side. So Haruna Idrisho will still be the leader of the NDC in Parliament. That is the next Parliament, the 8th Parliament. James Aveji will deputize him. And going forward, Muntaka Mubara of Asumasi had earlier indicated to us that he desired to maintain his position as the chief whip. And so the party granted that. He still remains the chief whip of the NDC. And then Ahmed Ibrahim plus Comfortable Gans that will deputize him respectively. So these are the nominations that the NDC has put forward going forward into the 8th Parliament. And so they're insisting that going into the 8th Parliament, they hold majority and that their side of the House should refer to themselves as the majority going into the 8th Parliament.
Now, going by what you're just saying, as in the NDC deciding that they're going to describe themselves as the majority, I'd want to believe that then majority, they are believing or seeing Haruna Iddrisu as majority leader, not minority leader.
That's correct. They are seeing Haruna Iddrisu as the majority leader. So I've been told by the party that in a communique to Parliament, that is the description of Haruna Iddrisu. They refer to him as the majority leader for the 8th Parliament and not the minority leader. And so they are insisting that they equally, I mean, since the NPP is claiming majority with 137 seats, they are equally occupying 137 seats. So they can also refer themselves as a majority in the House. And I'm sure I'm going forward into the 8th Parliament or after the swearing-in, we'll get to know who actually is the majority or not. But that is the position from the NDC. And this afternoon, when we spoke to Haruna Iddrisu himself at the State of the Nation in Parliament, he also described himself as a potential majority leader in the 8th Parliament.
Right.
And so for him, he has already argued that position to himself as a majority leader. So it's not surprising that the party has now officially communicated to Parliament to let them know that, well, their side also be referred to as majority. And so they need to accord the needed respect to the majority leader in the words of the NDC party. That's Haruna Iddrisu.
All right, thank you very much, Kwesi Parker-Wilson. Also joining us is parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku Gakpo, who has been following Parliament for a while now, and he actually understands the dynamics that's going to be at play. Now, Joseph, we're expecting that all this is going to be set out, and we're going to get to know who determines the speakership or who wins the speakership. So how is this going to play out come midnight of January 6th going into 7th?
And so the MPs will begin convening on the dawn, actually the 9th. So on the 9th of the 6th of January, around 10:30, the new MP elects will be gathering in Parliament House. And then the expectation is that at 12 midnight, going into the Thursday morning, then the sitting will begin. It may delay for some minutes, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, and eventually begin a little later than that, as has been the case as we've seen over the years. And the Clerk of Parliament will then take his seat as the one who presides over the sitting, because by then there will be no speaker. So the clerk is the one who would oversee the processes as far as electing a speaker is concerned. And so MPs will then go ahead and propose their nominated candidates. And the requirement is that anyone whose name is proposed should have given his consent to being proposed in writing to the clerk. So those conversations should have happened behind the scenes. So an MP will propose, and then there will be a seconding of it. Another MP will have to second it. There will be no debate. And then if there are other candidates, then their names will be proposed as well. So in this case, what we will see is an MP from the NPP side proposing Professor Michael Quay, and another MP seconding that proposal. After that, an NDC MP will propose Alban Bagbin, then that will be seconded. And then the clerk will then go ahead and oversee the processes and get his staff to come in and get the balloting, the ballot papers out. Then there will be the secret voting, most likely, based on which after that the counting will be done and the declaration will be done of who exactly has won the poll.
All right, so there's going to be secret voting, which means that it's possible that one MP or an MP for one side is going to vote for a nomination made from the other side. But apparently the chief whips are making it, they're making sure that that's not going to happen. Explain how that's going to work out.
It looks very much so. And even apart from that, there's the possibility that an MP can spoil a ballot. Maybe mistakenly, maybe deliberately, can print on or probably write the names of the two individuals on the paper, or probably pretend as if he had written something on the paper but actually writes nothing and dumps it in there, and so then it becomes a spoiled ballot.
All right, but my understanding is that the whips are supposed to see how you voted before you cast that ballot.
No, not necessarily. So on the previous occasion that they've been voting in the House, the names of individual MPs are mentioned, and they are called to the front area, and they are handed papers. Then they write their names in it, and then it gets deposited in a box, and then the counting is done. Usually, it has to do with the role of more like polling agents, which the whips would usually serve as at the time that the voting is ongoing. But the voting itself is supposed to be secret. But of course, the job of the whip is to ensure that they encourage their members to show up and give them reasons to vote for the candidate the party is pushing for. But when he is there casting his vote, it's between himself and his God.
All right. So looking at how close this is, the MPP having 137 MPs and the NDC having 137, with the Formula MP being the only independent candidate. Should it happen that one MP from one side fails to show up for any reason at all, it could affect the outcome of the poll.
Precisely, and it could result in a tie as far as the voting is concerned. Interesting enough, the standing orders and even the Constitution doesn't make room for what happens when there is a tie. It only makes room for a situation where there are more than 3 people casting, standing for the position, and then there's a tie and the last person gets eliminated. But when it has to do with 2 people standing for the position, there is no provision for what happens under situations where there's a tie. Then the voting has to be done again and probably again until one way or the other someone manages to win.
All right. And
just to mention that on the bit about MPs, someone not showing up, funny enough, just about 2 weeks ago, the majority leader told MPs that they should be very careful with their security and beef up their security going forward, so that then everyone is available to cast their votes on the dawn of the 7th of January. I don't know why he said that, but there probably was a reason to that.
Now, there are 101 reasons why an MP may end up not showing up on the day. So it could be he has his car breaks down, or for some reason he's unwell. He ends up in the hospital. There are 101 reasons. Now, that's the reason you should stay tuned in to Joynews, because we're going to bring you, this is unprecedented, and we're going to bring you live coverage of proceedings in Parliament, and it's going to be all through until the inauguration of President Akufo-Addo as for his second term. And so do stay tuned in. But thank you very much, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, for bringing us that insight from Parliament. But staying with Parliament, what happened today, President Akufo-Addo on Tuesday, he delivered a State of the Nation address, the last for his first term, saying Ghanaians gave him a resounding mandate in the December 7 election, which he believes was fair. He ever described as a good thing the decision by his main opponent in the race to go to court.
Speaker, the next Parliament is not going to be anything like this one that ends today. I do not suggest that the House might not be as busy, but the sitting arrangements, the source and decibel levels of sound from the House would certainly be different. The good people of Ghana have spoken and given Parliament an almost equal strength on both sides of the House. We have no choice but to work with the consequences of the desires of the people. The House would have to be more accommodating of each other's views and probably devise new ways of conducting its affairs in the interest of the good governance of our people. I am thankful to the Ghanaian people and to the Almighty that I have been given a clear mandate to govern the country for 4 more years, and thereby given the opportunity to complete tasks, consolidate some of the far-reaching measures we have introduced, and initiate further changes and adjustments to policies and practices. The Constitution demands that we go to the people after 4 years to ask for a mandate, and we must listen to the voice of the people. I said during the election campaign, and it is my firm and passionate view, that I should only be president in a fairly conducted election, which I believe in all sincerity the election of 7th December was. I recognize that my main opponent in the election, the former President John Dramani Mahama, has gone to the Supreme Court to seek its intervention and grant reliefs that he believes were compromised in the conduct of the elections. It is good for the nation that in the end he chose the legal path, instead of the pockets of violence that have attended the rejection of the results by his party in the period after the elections. We all have to make a deliberate decision to invest in the rule of law and uphold the integrity of the institutions of our state, so that no person or group of persons take the law into their own hands with impunity. Mr. Speaker, it has been my great pleasure and exceptional privilege these 4 years to have served as president of our beloved country. I'm grateful to you, this honorable House, for its cooperation in the enterprise to attain our common goal and aspiration of advancing the peace, progress, and welfare of the Ghanaian people.
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu, however, insists the results of the elections were unfair and questioned why the president did not acknowledge the deaths that occurred during the polls. He believes the NDC won the Techiman South parliamentary seat, which gives them the power to form the majority in the House.
That this honorable House thanks His Excellency the President for the message on the state of the nation. We will do so, Mr. Speaker, as you rightly pointed out, but to remind the President that Parliament is not almost in the 8th Parliament. The numbers we are certain, if the Jima is added, we leave our fractured democracy in your hands. Conspicuously lost in your speech is the loss of lives in Techima and other. We have an economy which is hugely devastating. We have a bag of corn selling for 200 Ghana a year. We will thank you. We will thank you for serving Ghana well. I will not open the debate today. Yes. I will not open the debate today. Mr. President, to remind you that peace must be predicated on fairness and justice.
Majority Leader Sechimen Sobonsu, in a rebuttal, dismissed claims the 8th Parliament will hang.
Mr. Speaker, for those of them who decide to be very speculative and live in the dream world, reality check would show where we are as a nation.
51-47.
Mr. Speaker, people should be woken up from their dreamland. But we are not there yet. In the scheme of Parliament arrangement, there's no hung Parliament. There's no hung Parliament in Ghana. There is always a majority caucus. By our own rules, there are only 2 caucuses in the House, majority, minority. Wherever the pendulum swings, Mr. Speaker, that group will constitute the majority. People should learn the rules of procedure in this House.
Well, the president has been praising his administration for various successes on agriculture. He said there is an abundance of food in the markets due to what he says are the sound agricultural policies introduced. He praised his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which he says has been replicated by the WHO. He had issues with the politicization of the fight against illegal mining. Meanwhile, MPs have been reacting to the President's directive. MPP MP and Vice Chairman of Parliament's Mines and Energy Committee, Judicial Kuduka, says the Interministerial Task Force which was entrusted with the anti-Galamsey fight, disappointed the president. At the height of the illegal mining fight, the president set up a ministerial committee on illegal mining to fight the menace. Environment Minister Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng, Land and Natural Resources Minister Asuma Treme, Local Government Minister Haji Alima Mahama, Interior Minister Ambrose Derry, Defense Minister Dominic Nituo, among others, served on the committee. Mr. Duka, who is NPP MP for Taekwondo, says the committee didn't do a good job.
Called for both minority and majority to take a decision on the illegal mining concept. I mean, he needs kind of a committee that will discuss some of these things dispassionately, and that is a good call that we're all going to contribute to ensure that mining sector becomes a blessing rather than a curse. And it's a good call. I was so excited that he put it that way, that we need to come together and think through how best we can tackle this menace.
He had 4 years to fix it. How come it was never fixed and it's now that it's become a topical issue again?
Yeah, he made an effort, and you realize that those he entrusted, his vision kind of disappointed him, and I must be frank on that point, that we could have done it differently. And I believe this time around...
The political appointee?
Yes. That is, I'm being blunt on that.
The ministers possibly?
I mean, the interministerial committee didn't do a good job as far as the whole fighting of Galamsey is concerned.
Well, some minority MPs have been criticizing the president's speech.
Violence that were attendant upon the elections during and immediately after, but he was very selective. He even failed to mention the persons who died, as a result of the violence. And it's very important because I know him to be a president who takes very serious interest in life lost, whether here or elsewhere. So for eight people to die during this election, for him to completely gloss over it, for me, is unacceptable. Now, he spoke about the state of the economy. He failed to churn out the figures, but he's aware how things are. And so we don't have the time to interrogate the entire spectrum of the speech.
I thought that he missed the opportunity to acknowledge the loss of lives during this election. I mean, this is something that has never happened. I mean, I can't remember the last election that we had people losing their lives in these numbers. And I thought that as the president of the country, should have taken the opportunity to acknowledge that. And that was a dent on our democracy, regardless of the circumstances. I mean, to get people shooting at collation center and people losing their lives. But he missed that opportunity. And I also thought that he was being choosy, in my view. I mean, when you want to talk about the economy, you remember to go and take 4 years ago his State of the Nation. He was emphatic about the mounting debt that has been left him. I thought he should have told this country where the debt stands today, because he knows he has more than double what he came to meet.
President says that the 8th Parliament demands that you build consensus. You think he's being sincere?
He is compelled to. That is not his wish. It's what the Ghanaian people impose on him, and he must respect it. He didn't win Parliament, nothing more. He should respect the principle and notion and practical operation of the doctrine of separation of powers. He's an executive president. He lost Parliament. He lost it. He's just forcing to add Chima and to add Sepsi, as you saw, and it's disappointing. Then cost of living and quality of life is deteriorating in Ghana. Read the Statistical Service and the UNDP report in Ghana, and he talks about Ghana exporting food. A bag of maize, as I heard from my mother for the first time, is now selling for more than 200 Ghana cedis in Tamale. That has never ever happened. A bag of corn. I use ordinary people to measure it, and then he prides himself with 1D, 1F. 1D, 1F not equitably distributed.
We'll be bringing you more reactions to the President's State of the Nation address. But in other news, the Supreme Court has, in a unanimous decision, ruled That a whole High Court erred when it granted an injunction against the gazetting of John Peter Amewu as Hohoe MP-elect. The court said the case filed by the SAL resident requested some reliefs that can only be granted through an election petition and not a human rights issue, as has been filed. It therefore set aside the portions of the case at the High Court that is requesting reliefs relating to the election of Mr. Amewu as MP for Hohoe. Court correspondent Joseph Akable has the rest of the story.
The Apex Court, in a unanimous decision, held that the election of Mr. Amewu is not an issue that is being contested at the whole High Court. And if any human rights issue relating to SAL has come up, then it should have been filed in the nature of an election petition and not as a human rights matter as has been currently filed at the whole High Court. The court therefore said that the judge erred in granting that injunction and will not set it aside since that injunction has died a natural death, was to last for 10 days and has already elapsed. The court then proceeded to set aside the reliefs that they are seeking at the whole High Court on the substantive action that wants the gazetting of Mr. Amewu to be put on hold and also his election as Hohoe MP to be set aside. The court said those are matters that cannot be requested of a court in the form of a human rights issue, and that the appropriate thing for them to have done is to have filed an election petition and not go via human rights issue. Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Adami told pressmen after proceedings that his side is satisfied with the court's decision.
Substantially, it resolved the issues, and indeed we are very grateful to the court. We're happy that justice has been served. Right from the outset, our contention was that the action filed at the High Court who was incompetent, was totally out of order, because you cannot seek election petition reliefs in a human rights action. And today, the court has held to the same effect, that was unjustified for them to have commenced an election petition and characterize him as a human rights action. So we're very grateful. And I think that it's also important for me to place on record certain misconceptions and misperceptions that have been made about the intervention of the Attorney General in this matter. And that is clearly because the Attorney General was sued. The Attorney General was a party to the High Court proceedings at whole. And if you are party to proceedings, you reserve the right to take any action at all that you think is available to you at law. And that is what the Attorney General did. We commenced an action here at the Supreme Court seeking to quash what went on at the High Court rule, because it was not according to law and it was granted by the court. Well, so our contention was that the matter was in the nature of a parliamentary election petition, and to that extent the orders of the court dated 23rd December ought to be struck out. The court granted an order of certiorari quashing the entire proceedings of the court on 23rd December 2020. So we're satisfied wholly with that one. Then the second relief for prohibition. The court granted same to the extent that it struck out the reliefs that were in the nature of an election petition sought against John Peter Amewu to restrain him from being gazetted, to restrain him from being put before Parliament for swearing in and all. That have been totally struck out by the court. And that's essentially what we thought would be justice in the circumstances. We are happy and very much satisfied with the orders made by the court today.
He also takes the view that the appropriate thing ought to be done by the Electoral Commission.
The Boehm issue, for me, is a simple and straightforward one. The court today has upheld the validity of CI 128. The court had indicated that clearly CI 128 was constitutional, and the interested parties led by Tashikata had failed to produce any evidence whatsoever impeaching the validity of CI 128. So, as far as I'm concerned, to the extent that CI 128 had placed the people of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Likpe, and Lolobi under Boehm, it resolved the issue. I think the consequence to all of this is that the Boehm election, if you ask me, yes, for me, was improperly conducted to the extent that it excluded the people of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, and Likpe. So I think that the proper thing to do is for the Electoral Commission to perhaps look at that issue and take due steps that will warrant a conduct of the Boehm election again. That's the most important thing. Of course, I'm also aware of the pendency of a suit filed by certain people seeking to have the Boehm election annulled and for a fresh election to be conducted. I think that issue will be dealt with by the High Court. And indeed, the court today, when it was preserving the part relating to human rights to be continued at the High Court too, clearly also is thinking on the same line. So that issue can be resolved by the High Court and the conclusion can be that the Boehm election should be conducted again.
What this means is that the governing MPP currently holds 137 seats in Parliament. Reporting for Joynews from the Supreme Court, my name is Joseph Akable.
You're watching Joynews when we're taking a break, but still ahead. In Business, Trade Ministry confers on the Ghana Revenue Authority, competent authority for trading under the Continental Free Trade Agreement. That'll be in business, but later on in the bulletin, we'll be bringing you more reactions to the President's State of the Nation address.
First and see whether if it's good, then normal.
Of course, you've been here for the past 4 years in the Akufo-Addo government, and you know the sort of things that he's been doing. If I ask you to rate him, for instance, the government and how it's been working, what will be your rating?
Oh no, and things are going wrongly.
Stay tuned in. We'll be back with all that and more.
Hello, good evening. It's time for business. I'm Charles Aitip. President Akufo-Addo has charged all state institutions to ensure that Ghanaian private sector businesses benefit hugely from the Continental Free Trade Agreement area. The president spoke at a business forum on the start of the Single African Market program in Ghana.
Estimated that the single continental African market will increase intra-Africa trade by as much as 35 billion United States dollars per year by harnessing the purchasing power of 1.2 billion Africans. Secondly, it will unlock and transform the huge resource endowments of African countries through value addition. Thirdly, it will increase export revenue earnings in Africa. Fourthly, it will promote regional value chains. And fifthly, it will create massive job opportunities for the youth of Africa. Government strategy for supporting the private sector to boost exports to other African countries underpins our national action plan for boosting intra-African trade and the National Export Development Strategy. The implementation of the government's flagship and priority programs, such as the One District, One Factory initiative, the program for Planting for Food and Jobs, Planting for Food and Export program, the Strategic Anchor Industries initiative, the Port Modernization program, and the new Integrated Trade Facilitation and Customs Management System, the ICOMS UNIPAS, is designed to transform the Ghanaian economy and position Ghana as the new manufacturing hub for the region. Government is committed to ensuring that adequate financial and human resources are mobilized to make Ghana the new commercial center for trade, finance, and investment on the continent, a duty we should fulfill as host country of the AFCFTA Secretariat. I expect all stakeholders in the export value chain, including the relevant ministries, trade and investment promotion agencies, regulatory institutions, and business development service providers, to work closely towards the common goal of ensuring that Ghana achieves the non-traditional export revenue target of 25 billion United States dollars within the next 10 years. I assure the AU Commission and the AFCFTA Secretariat of the continuous support of the government and people of Ghana for the success of the AFCFTA initiative.
Well, the Secretary General of the Secretariat of AFTA, Wamkele Mene, also hinted that the heads of state of the African Union have agreed for Ghana to be the commercial hub for Africa by moving all departments under the deal to the capital of Ghana.
To the 13th extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the African Union on the 5th of December. We now have 54 countries out of 55 who have signed the agreement. We have 34 countries who have deposited their instruments of ratification, Nigeria being the 34th country on the morning of the 5th of December. Indeed, Ghana was one of the very first countries to sign and ratify the AfCFTA agreement. The AfCFTA Secretariat being here in Accra, Ghana, is not only a symbol of confidence in the country, but also signals Ghana as the commercial and trade center of Africa.
Let's longer on the continental future because the Trade Ministry has conferred on the Ghana Revenue Authority a competent authority for trading under this new pact.
Authority that determines, it's the Ministry of Trade or the Departments of Trade of various countries that are responsible for that. So they are now entrusting that responsibility to customs. So we will have to give approval and say that, yes, indeed, going by the rules, we have various annexes and appendices that determine the rules of the game, the processes and procedures that you have to follow. So, and each and every one of this, first and foremost, if you are going to certify that this product is coming from a member country, a state party, then you look at the whole product, the processes. Is it wholly obtained in this member state party, or it is partly and substantially? So if it can be determined that indeed everything about that product was made in a state party or a state by that, then the certificate is issued. But there must be an authority that will be tasked with that responsibility, and that is what has been conferred on Ghana Customs.
The processes that you go through, there are about 10, especially when you are exporting, about 10 or 11, if I'm too sure. Yeah. I mean, can't we synchronize all this?
Yes, because most of them are going to be done electronically. There's that synchronization. It is not that it's like using the ICOMS now. The ICOMS is a single window platform, end-to-end process. And so we, the stakeholders, have respective roles to play.
And that'll be all for business. We're back after 8. Sports, in the meantime, is up next.
Hi, I'm Gary L. Smith, and it's time for the sport here on Joynews Prime. Thank you for your time. First story, the government of Ghana has finally eased restrictions on football being played behind closed doors. Henceforth, matches will be played with fans up to 25% of stadium capacity, and that's according to the release you see on your screens from the Ministry of Youth and Sports earlier today. And it gives a background that says that on Sunday, the 20th of September, the president announced the easing of restrictions, but before the president's restrictions and instructions could be done on November 2020, there was a spike in the country's coronavirus cases, and the statement mentions that this necessitated the issuance of an administrative directive from the ministry for 25% seating capacity announced earlier to be put on hold, and that football matches will be played behind closed doors. It says that because of the increasingly positive situation with COVID-19 in Ghana, the government is thinking it wise to bring fans back to the stadium, but in a gradual process. So 25% capacity, as previously announced by the president, will be upheld, but with all existing safety and hygiene protocols still in force. And it says that the Inter-Ministerial Task Force will continue to monitor the evolving COVID-19 situation, will advise when more spectators will be allowed to all stadia in the country. And that is signed by Isaac Isiama, the Minister for the sector. Now, Ghana Premier League action returns shortly, but one of the big teams, Asante Kotoko, is scheduled to play in the African Champions League. And Asante Kotoko players have received their outstanding per diems after they boycotted training in Sudan, but bonuses are still yet to be paid. The 22 players who made the trip to the northeastern African country opted not to train this morning over unpaid bonuses and per diems ahead of their second leg CAF Champions League clash with Al Hilal. The intent was to boycott the match, forcing management to act quickly to settle part of the debts. Joy Sports sources say Administrative and Operations Manager Emmanuel Dasobri and Chief Executive Officer Nana Amponsa met the team manager Ohini Brenya and presented all per diems owed the players to them. And the players received a total of $8,800, with each player pocketing $400. There's more in this report.
Playing body of 22 players who made a trip to Sudan opted not to train on Tuesday morning due to unpaid bonuses and per diems ahead of their second leg CAF Champions League clash with Al Hilal. Some players complained about lack of respect from management. The senior players then called the management into a meeting to make clear their unhappiness. They talked about bonuses from games against Legon Cities and Dreams FC. The players made it clear that they won't play this Al Hilal game if they are not paid. Chief Executive Officer Nana Yawan then promised to pay the players after the game, but the players rejected it. Kotoko faced an uphill task to progress to the next stage of the competition after losing 1-0 to the Sudanese side in the first leg in Accra. The Kumasi-based side have made a poor start to the season and currently sit in 9th place in the Ghana Premier League standings.
That's the sport for now. We'll be back on the other side of 8 with more.
Welcome back to Joynews Prime. Now, in more reactions to the State of the Nation address, mixed feelings greeted the president's delivery at the Bosokai Spare Parts Enclave in Accra. While some of the artisans commended the president's efforts in his first term, others said the NPP government must move beyond the free SHS policy to invest in other sectors of the country. Some of them have been speaking with my colleague Manuel Kuranting.
There's any spot within the capital where the conversation is rife about the president's State of the Nation address, that's really got to be here. In fact, really varied opinions about what the president has been saying about the state of the economy and it being on the path to recovery. And some of the other interventions, which of course the NPP government has been rolling out in the past 4 years. Well, let me start here and then I'll walk into the yard a bit.
Things are not going well. As due to the conversation, we don't know how things are going well. So we are trying our best and see whether if it's good, then normal.
Of course, you've been here for the past 4 years in the Akufo-Addo government and you know the sort of things that he's been doing. If I ask you to rate him, for instance, the government and how it's been working, what will be your rating?
Oh no, and things are going wrongly. Things are not moving well at all. Things are going very slowly, yeah.
And what do you expect, for instance, the next 4 years to be like?
Oh, next 4 years, we expect better. We expect if it will be better for us. They will buy goods, they will buy our goods. We have sold well, maybe it will be good, yeah.
Great. So the economic indices as were, exposed by His Excellency the President in there, according to this man who just spoke to me, doesn't really show in their pocket. He says that, well, when they sell, people don't buy. One mantra which really now sounds like a broken record, we hear it all the time, and it's sometimes even difficult to know whether or not that is the real situation on the ground, but they are here and they say so. Let me speak to these people here. My boss, good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to President Akasa. Wakasa say on mine a year 4 years HME Akufo-Addo aban no mutumi aye ade ama omano sinina so na niam akra eguso a eye den etoto akwan mu wo krom no etewo sen
me mom de anado amamu no koye because omo ye nyuma bebre within 4 years but na ho kire wo free SHS no ebeboa ma homophobia eye free but still no na nkrofo scan wo mbotom nti sisi a no de na ehia ne se obetima ye esika sam no ho adwuma man ono ne ade a sia ehia amanfo pa because nkrofo complain say we ho a ne bako school nanso no okwa dwuma na dwuma enye esa na na je sa de abaye man na ni agibat na ni nyiyi
o mekase so far no President Nanado baye no wabɔ ne ho modern mfie na ye de man no wabɔ ne ho modern bae modern mo na wabɔ no mekase enwie peye cause Ghana fo hia mo afri ne ho enti ne yeto abama no e ba free SHS o de aba eye nipa bebre nya ho mfaso because nenye nipa nyina na krache fo mu fie bae ne wo ye lucky a na oba dibu wa krache ni timi eba wo fie se nkwala e ko school so aye mo bae sisi a no wonyere ne ho na 4 years ya san de amani ye de ne tena so a omo ne ho modern mo na e besre ne se me how baako e ya kra Kumasi road besre no se kwan no de kufuo sha ase no ofura konwa so aban abakọ ba ye nhunu hwe ye resrom so mo ye double na o mo nye maye ye bo asi akwanhia no cause udu ba bi o ma ye double na ye fa so no a nhunu akwanhia wo ho mbo ba obesi sun le ni mu a akwanhia ne ma ekoso wo ho no enye
well, he makes the point that, well, he's to an extent satisfied by the efforts of the government in the past 4 years, except that he's expecting that some of these policies and programs which have been undertaken in the past 4 years are extended to some other areas. He mentions particularly road infrastructure and singles out the Accra-Kumasi highway, and he's talking about the dualization of that particular stretch to deal with the incessant, accidents that we see on the roads. Let me move to his colleague here. My boss, also joining in commentary and teaching say, ono akase wakase free SHS no na ope say Accra Kumasi nkwan so yenhwe na also what dey saying?
Menene adwene. Isan say me so me driver ni a me nam kwan no so bi ntino. Kwan de we to ni na yehu. So we see double lane no so na mbla peni kan.
There's been mixed reactions to the first term performance of the Akufo-Addo administration, also in the Upper West region. While several people commend the government for implementing pro-poor policies which have improved the economic well-being of the people, others believe the first term has been a complete waste of time. Joynews' Upper West region correspondent Rafiq Salam reports from where.
President Akufo-Addo is mandated by the Constitution of the country to add, start and end of each session of Parliament to deliver the State of the Nation address. On Tuesday, he is expected to fulfill the constitutional mandate. We are at the heart of town, to be precise, a central business district of the one municipality. We want to get the mood, speak to the people about the highs and lows of the Akufo-Addo administration.
For the good things, that is the free senior high. Then when it comes to the COVID-19, we can also talk of the free electricity and the free water. These are some of the things actually he have done that I've cherished so much.
What about the flip side?
That one we'll talk of the election violence and the other lesson that we are facing now. These are some of the bad things. The election violence is what we are crying of. If he can tell the state institutions to work as they are supposed to work on.
It would have been the free HHS, but with the double track system in it, and the way they did it so fast, it hasn't helped us. That would have been the best if he had taken his time to study the terrain, to look at the infrastructure development, whether there's infrastructure before implementing it. Because the double track system haven't helped us. And if they don't take it up, it will not help us.
Every government will actually touch on some points. To be honest enough, he did his own. But I think that wasn't satisfactory enough to point out that this is what Akufo-Addo has done, which is that much beneficial to us as Ghanaians.
So for you have seen nothing?
I can point out what. Let's look at Upper West, for instance. That's a case study. What can you point in Upper West that this is what Nana Akufo-Addo has done? That we can rely on that to say that this is what we have achieved.
They have got free HHS.
Free
HSS.
HSS. It's a pity.
Planting for food and job.
It's a pity. Talking of free HSS, possibly some other part of the country can talk of free HSS, but not the northern part of Ghana. We have been benefiting free HSS, not today. It's our entitlement that the forefathers fought for us. All that I will even say is taking part of our entitlement. We've been enjoying free HSS, not today. And if you talk of free HSS, let's go back. Before 2016, there was free HSS progressively, and it was moving in accordance, not just jamming up everything. Students will be in the house. Now, my little kids are getting pregnant all over. As a teacher, I will sit in the house. Many of my students today, when I see them, I will not identify them as students. The only thing I will identify them to be ladies around flexing. They have nothing doing. They don't go to school any longer. So what else can these people stand to benefit if we are talking that there is free senior high school?
The high number of ministers appointed by President Akufo-Addo also came to the fore.
I haven't seen anything much because I've not seen the ministers doing anything. I've not seen it. I'm yet to see.
So you think that
they all sat behind the fence. So I'm yet to see.
So you think that the number of ministers that were appointed over 100?
It was too much.
It was too much?
Yes, it was too much. So if they downsize it, it will help. And if they also look at the ones that will be competent and put them there, it will help us. They shouldn't appoint because they are MPP members. They should look at those who can do the work. Because it is Ghanaian taxpayers' money that is used to pay them. So if they don't look at Ghanaians as people who voted them in and look for the best people to help him develop the nation, we will still be at where we are.
Several people have commended the government for implementing proper policies which has improved the economic well-being of the people. Others think that the 4-year reign of the government is a complete waste of their time. One of them is this man riding as a pillion and gave his name only as Move It. You, has Akufo-Addo not employed you?
I haven't employed anything. It be lie. It be great lie. It be lie. Anybody say that Akufo-Addo employed anybody say lie. Look at my wife. We are hustlers. It may be easy. Getting to 20 years today. Job, you get new money. We do not see the money, and you are enjoying the money alone. Why? We the poor people. What are you doing?
Despite the numerous projects the government said it has implemented in the Upper West region, the people are saying that they are yet to feel it in their pockets. It is their hope that the next 4 years will be better. Reporting for Joynews, Rafik Salam.
And residents of Techimang in the Bono East region have been sharing with Joynews the highs and lows of the first term of the Akufo-Addo-led government. They also highlight unemployment and improvement in infrastructure as two key issues they would want the president to tackle in his second term. My colleague Anna Sabit has more in the following report.
We hit the streets of Kenten, a suburb of Techimang, to inquire from residents here of their assessment for his first term, the highs and the lows, as well as their expectations of his second term in office.
What I am excited about Nadu's first term is the introduction of the free senior high school, because as parents, the free SHS is very important. Some of us have been heavily affected for lack of education, and so that policy is very important for me.
The President Akufo-Addo, the first term,
the free SHS is the most important policy under Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's first tenure, but in terms of infrastructure, he failed the country a lot.
Like I say, we see infrastructure, in fact, we began a few election.
I am sure that is why Ghanaians voted against him during the 2020 general elections, but that for me is not the right thing.
Your school sem eko kama mayen ti ani jam aban ho eboa me say free education e ma me ma ho e ma sisi me ho hen me sinti se be ya bibia be ko so ama me e o ma psetenem ne me Ghana man na timamufo no ma hu say improvement so ye de e ba man no ama man na succeed.
The first thing that he have done, he have made a good idea for
most of us, a lot.
whilst they share with us one or two things they felt went so positive about the first term of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, they however have some lows in relation to his first term.
Fine. Me a driver.
As a driver, sometimes passengers complain of high lorry fares, but that is as a result of high fuel prices as well as cost of spare parts. So we are hoping that these things are taken care of this time around.
The first 4 years now,
what went wrong within the first 4 years is that as drivers, insurance has to be affordable for us, but that's not the case. So we will be pleased if that is considered in his next term.
4 years,
Going forward, what are their expectations in the second term of the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo-led government? The government needs to work towards providing jobs for the people. If that is done, there won't be insecurity in the country. I suggest government construct roads, hospitals, and other infrastructural projects that will help develop the country. That is what I think will help in his second term. From the streets here in Techiman, in the Bono region, my name is Anna Sabit, reporting for Joynews.
In other news, Accra Circuit Court 4 has once again adjourned the criminal trial involving a national security operative, Collins Kweku, who fired shots at the Ablekuma Central Coalition Centre during the just-ended general elections. It is the 6th consecutive time the case has been adjourned. Proceedings were adjourned last week due to ill health on the part of the Circuit Court Judge Emmanuel Sando, who was again unable to attend the hearing Tuesday. Kweku Sante was in court for Joynews.
Accra Circuit Court 4 has adjourned for the 6th time the case of alleged shooting by a national security operative at the Ablekuma Central Coalition Centre during the just-ended general elections to Monday, January 11, 2021. The court last week adjourned proceedings to today as a result of the Circuit Court Judge Emmanuel Sando's inability to show up due to ill health. The judge was unable to attend today too for the same reason. The court has since written to the Chief Justice to transfer the case to a new court until Judge Emmanuel Sando is able to resume his full duties. The suspect, Collins Kweku, alias Kola, was arraigned for his alleged role in the shooting in the leg of a journalist with Newswatch Ghana online portal, Pius Esiedu Kwenin. The shooting incident also caused varying degree of injuries to some other persons at the Ablekuma Central Coalition Centre on December 8 last year. Collins Kweku, aka Kola, has pleaded not guilty to all 6 counts of causing of unlawful harm when he first appeared in court on December 17, 2020, and has since been denied bail. One of the victims, Pius Esiedu Kwenin, has since been discharged from the hospital but was expected to return to the hospital today for a medical review.
Members of Parliament have refused to approve the ex gratia package for members of the executive arm of government until the President increases the package of MPs as contained in the Professor Ya Ntiamwa Bedu Committee's report. At a closed-door sitting of MPs late last night, the MPs demanded that the President issues a white paper varying the emoluments as contained in the report before the House will approve the benefits of the executive. Joseph Opoku-Kakpo has more.
The 5-member committee set up in June has determined the salaries, benefits and end-of-service packages for the President, Vice President, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Speaker of Parliament, MPs, Supreme Court judges, Auditor General, Commission chairpersons, among others. The President is expected to approve that of MPs and other Article 71 office holders, whilst Parliament approves that of the Executive. At a closed-door meeting in Parliament House last night to approve that of the Executive, the MPs expressed disappointment. Their take-home back pay plus end-of-service benefits, as contained in the report, did not meet the minimum threshold of 600,000 Ghana cedis that was paid to ordinary MPs in the State Parliament. A source in the meeting told Joynews The committee's recommendations put MPs at the bottom of the ladder, below the executive and even the judiciary. That is not fair, unquote. After about 3 hours of deliberation, the MPs demanded that the president issues a white paper varying the emolument of MPs before they will approve that of the executive. The committee's report recommends that the MPs take home an end-of-service benefit of 4 months of their salaries for every year that they served in the legislature, but the MPs want that increased. The House has today and tomorrow to take a second look at the portions of the committee's reports spelling out the emoluments of officials of the executive arm of government and approve it before Parliament dissolves on Wednesday.
Meanwhile, a member of Parliament of a parliamentary committee set up to liaise with the Professor Kusua Beidu Committee, Ben Kodo, says the MPs are only demanding what they rightly deserve.
We have agreed that the rate of rise or the rate of rise in the salaries awarded to MPs is not good, because the general public has been taking a certain rise in salaries annually, and they receive the difference every year. Unlike Parliament, which has stayed there for 4 good years without getting any rise. We have been on the 2016 salaries up to date.
We heard that you, the MPs, are insisting that if you are not working away with like 600,000 cedis plus, you will not accept and go ahead and approve that of the executive.
Nobody has even done any computation so as to determine that it is 200,000 or 500,000. The components, the Constitution guarantees gratuity for MPs. Then if you do not pay salary which is due to the person, somebody, for 4 years, you are bound to pay arrears. So these are justified. Even teachers, nurses, they are always asking for arrears. So MPs have the right to ask for arrears when the increases are yes, when the increases are approved, they will require salary arrears. So it is not gratuity as people normally talk about. It is not only gratuity, but there are arrears to be paid 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. You see, people should know that the 8th Parliament is also going to live on 2017 7th Parliament salaries for a long time. Yeah. Just as we of the 7th Parliament have lived on the last point of 2016 salary. For 4 good years, MPs have been on the same salary. So when a small increase is granted, we have to calculate the arrears, tax it, and pay the net to them.
So that then, apart from the 1% additional increase and the general increase other public servants saw, yes, are there any things you want to see changed as far as your emoluments as MPs are concerned? Are you asking for more in terms of the number of months that should go into the end of service benefits?
No.
So it's just about the additional.
It's the same. Okay. It's the same as has been in the past.
But is it fair to hold the executive to ransom and say if you don't increase hours by that additional percentage points, they will not approve yours?
No. Nobody is holding anybody to ransom. We are in the process. We haven't finished. So nobody is holding anybody to ransom.
And you're confident it will be concluded before business of the House gets done by
I'm very confident about that.
35 years old Samuel Judicial is under police supervision at the Brasso Clinic in the Iwakwa South Municipality for killing his wife, Abna, who was 42 years old. According to Suhum District Police Commander, Chief Superintendent Joseph Owusu, 2 gentlemen reported to the police at around 12 a.m. on Tuesday that one Samuel Judicial had shot the wife dead at Achim in Kronso in the Iwakwa South District and taking to his heels. The deceased was conveyed to the Suhum Government Hospital morgue, while a search party was commissioned at Nkroso to apprehend Samuel Judicial. He was subsequently arrested by the community members at Abesim near Nkroso. According to Chief Superintendent Joseph Owusu, the suspect attempted hitting his wife with a hammer and sustained several injuries in the process. He has since been admitted at the Abesim Clinic for treatment under police supervision, waiting to be brought to the Suhum Police Station for further investigation. Chief Superintendent Joseph Owusu has been explaining the case to Joynews correspondent Maxwell Kudeko.
Around 12 a.m., one Kwajuk
was something accompanied by Kwaku Osen Maso Bin, all of Nkroso Abisim. Call at the police station reported that yesterday around 11 o'clock, Abina Owusua, now deceased, age 42 years, was shot dead by her husband, Samuel Jeti, age 35 years, and bolted. On receipt of this information, police proceeded to the scene and found the dead body, the body of the deceased lying in a prone position in a pool of blood with gunshot.
After several months of closure forced by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in Ghana, schools have been deserted. The state of these schools now is quite terrible. Most classroom blocks have been taken over by dust and cobwebs, making them almost unbearable to standing. Following the President's announcement of the reopening of schools on the 15th of January 2020, students, teachers and parents are feverishly preparing for the reopening. Judith Awochetando visited some schools and has more in this report.
This is the Laboni SDA Church School. It is one of the many private schools situated in the Laboni community. It has been over 10 months since any activity happened here. With schools set to open in under 2 weeks, we have come to find out if the structures are ready for the return of students.
So we are entering one of the classroom blocks to have a feel of what it looks like ever since schools have been shut down. Wow. I'm really taken aback. This classroom has gathered so much dust on the chairs, on the board, and on all surfaces. It's so bad that it looks like this place has been deserted for years. From what I'm seeing, it seems that students might have a lot of work doing when they come back to school.
We have started something because we had rumor that school was going to be reopened in January. So we had a head start for the program. And so we are working towards that, even though time is not on our side because we need to get new furniture we're expanding our school, so we need one classroom, get furniture and everything. But we're working towards that.
This is a small football park in Newtown. A lot of these children should ordinarily be in school at this time. This has now become their daily routine as they spend hours in the day playing on this park.
I really feel happy because when we are in the house, children don't really learn. They go outside and play and they really get fun. So we want to go to school. I'm really prepared. I'm very happy. I want to go to school and learn and I have a good certificate.
I'm very excited. I've met many of my friends. School is very sweet. It's exciting to be in school. Yeah, I've missed school. So I'm very prepared. Yeah, I'm very prepared for school because when I went in the house, I was learning everything. I'm very prepared for the school.
Okay, as a parent, I'm not ready for my child to go to school because I feel my child is too young. Looking at how kids are, and then in their class, I think they have 2 teachers. But with their number, I don't think they can be able to observe the protocols as the president wants everybody to do. Even in town, you can see some are wearing the face masks, others are not wearing. You see kids running here and there, and to me, I feel it's not safe.
Since the COVID took place, there are so many measures that you're supposed to put in place. Maybe there should be a provision of nose masks for the kids, and then every class, depending on the school that the kids find themselves, they should be able to minimize or reduce the number of students in the class.
The uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic remains a challenge. It is not yet known when Ghana will deliver the new vaccines, and many of the country's problems with education, like the infrastructural deficits, persist. Many, especially the children, are hoping that their return would be safe and they would be able to make up for the lost time. Judith Awochethando's report for Joynews.
We're taking a break to bring you more business. Do stay tuned.
And you welcome to business. President Akufo-Addo has touted the government's efforts at stabilizing the economy despite the impact of COVID-19. Delivering the State of the Nation's address in Parliament, the president said government will implement prudent measures to quicken the fiscal consolidation program that will put the economy in a strong growth path in 2021.
We set to work quickly, and I'm glad to say that we've been able to stabilize the economy, exit satisfactorily the IMF program, and restore confidence in the economy. At the end of 2019, the economy was characterized by strong growth in response to implementation of government flagship programs, single-digit inflation, reduced fiscal deficits, with 3 consecutive years of primary surpluses, relatively stable exchange rate, significant improvement in the current account with 3 consecutive years of trade surpluses, strong foreign exchange reserve buffers, and markedly reduced lending rates.
Well, let's stay on Akufo-Addo's State of the Nation's address because the head of Financial Advisory Unit of Deloitte, Yao Lade, is calling for a diversification of the economy for a strong rebound in 2021.
The president captures it, particularly on the economic front. You would appreciate that round about the time that his government came to office, there were a few challenges, and it's usually the trend that we see when we do have elections. So in election years, subsequent years, you have some challenges with the economy. But that being said, I think the government inherited an economy and they pursued some policies to reverse some of the challenges that they had. So maybe to summarize it, if you look at GDP, for instance, before around about 2017, GDP was about 8.1%. It grew to 6.3% and further to 6.5%. So on average, our GDP over the last 3 years before 2020 was about 7%. That was remarkable if you compare that to our peers within the West Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. That was remarkable, so remarkable achievement. But then the COVID pandemic hit, and our GDP estimate of 2020, which was about 6.8%, was revised to 2.6%, further revised to 0.9%, and currently, as we speak, we are looking at reversing that to about 1.9%. Pundit also puts that at a recession. So for the first time in over decades, Ghana is going to record a recession this year, or 2020. That is to fairly balance it. You realize that before 2020, the economy was growing remarkably at about 7% on average. But 2020, when we were hit with the pandemic, it saw a reversal. And this reversal was mainly as a result of shortfall in revenues from oil, income that we are expecting, indirect taxes from import duties and stuff like that. I think on the other front, inflation also declined. So inflation as of 2017 was about 11.8%, declining to 9.4% in 2018, and further declining to 7.9%. And as we speak, it's still run about a single-digit inflation. So that's also a remarkable achievement by the government. I think also on the exchange rate, the cedi has been fairly stable over the same period. I think what we haven't managed well, which we would rightly put before government, is our debt. Our debt to GDP ratio from 2017 was about 56.1%. It rose to 58% in 2018, and then 2019, it's about 60.1%. And as we speak, our debt to GDP ratio is over 70%. So fairly, the government has managed the GDP growth well, inflation very well, and exchange rate has been fairly stable. But on the flip side, I think we haven't managed very well our debt. That as a result of several factors, including the pandemic. But I think that going forward, we should put in the right measures to manage our debt. That's where I think we didn't score very well. But on the other economic front, government has managed to some extent very well.
And that's what some other people are questioning, the fact that the president didn't talk about our debt situation at all when he made that speech. But again, you make the point about the pandemic, which we didn't expect that the government had to deal with. And it's not just Ghana. So many countries are experiencing a recession at this point. And so the president talks about prudent measures to quicken the fiscal consolidation program, i.e. reducing government deficits and debt accumulation. And we expect that the finance minister will give further details when he appears before Parliament in March. How would you advise the finance minister to approach it?
Yeah, I think when the government presented the appropriation budget, which is like a 3-month budget because we are getting into elections, one of the points that was raised at the time was about how we manage our debt. And I think there was this big story about our debt to GDP ratio. One of the ways that government should be looking at is to taking advantage of our debt opportunities that we have with our developing countries. So some developed countries have offered to restructure debts for developing countries. And I think that is one of the ways that we should pursue. Because our debt to GDP ratio at the rate at which it is growing is unsustainable. And going forward, government has hinted that it's going to the capital market to borrow additional about 3 billion on the capital market. That is also an expensive source. So we should be looking at diversifying our income and also diversifying our borrowing sources. If we do not diversify our borrowing sources, I think the borrowing sources that we have are quite expensive.
Well, that's how we end business. Sports is up next.
The Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology is adopting what management terms a blended approach in teaching and learning as part of COVID-19 preventive measures. This includes the use of online-based learning and physical classroom activity. University Relations Officer Dr. Norris Bequin explains normal classroom activities will be conducted under strict COVID-19 protocols. Law firms Naya Aljima visited the campus and filed this report.
Fiber optic cables are already laid in wait for government's free internet connectivity for schools, which will improve connectivity on campus. Already, the V-class medium deployed at the peak of the pandemic to complete the academic year has been strengthened to withstand any eventual pressure. Dr. Bequin says the system is enhanced to give students the best of academic experience.
If you have a class size of, let's say, 500, 600, 800, certainly it is not advisable to have all those students there. And so majority of the students will have to join the V class. And we'll have some of the classes will break them into smaller sessions. Those who will be doing laboratory work will also be structured into teams or maybe groups. So the first group will come, the second group will come, and so on and so forth. You know, because every student who enters KNUST is given a free Vodafone chip. And we intend to, we had negotiated with Vodafone to increase the data, so the student will be able to access, to use it to access.
A new building for the Faculty of Allied Science is completed to reduce congestion in existing classrooms. Major expansion here at the KNUST campus. Behind me is the new School of Business for students in this faculty. On my right is a new building to serve students in the Social Science faculty. Veronica buckets and hand sanitizer dispensers are already installed for observance of protocols. Dr. Bequin believes the expansion project on the main campus and that of Obuasi will help enforcement of all protocols.
Obuasi campus has also been very active. We admitted about 350 students last year. This year we intend to increase it by additional 500 students. And so expansion work is also ongoing at Obuasi campus.
Meanwhile, hall and hostel managers have received training on new guidelines for resumption of school. Protocols for persons who may show signs of COVID-19 are in place.
We are actually appointing what we call COVID-19 focal points persons in all the halls and in all the private hostels, so that we do consider. And then we'll also be developing education materials, and then we'll make sure that we extend all this to all the hostels where our students are covered. Prior to this, we have done extensive fumigation. We've done fumigation in all these halls, including private halls, hostels.
Academic activities in the universities resume on January 9th. From Kumasi for Joynews, Nane Aljima reporting.
And that'll be how we wrap up the bulletin for this evening. I'm Israel. Thank you very much for watching. PM Express is up next a bit.